All right, I'll call this Richfield Planning Commission meeting for September 24th to order. Our first item is approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting of August 27th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from last month?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So the next item is an opportunity for citizens to address the commission for items that are not on the agenda. So we'll have public hearings for both the 7301 pen and the tattoo ordinance change momentarily, but if you have anything else you'd like to say, this is your opportunity to do so. Okay. So then do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. So our first item is a public hearing to consider a resolution and zoning ordinance amending the comprehensive plan and zoning designations for 7301 Penn Avenue. And sorry, also consideration of the approval of a resolution related to a stipulation placed upon the property by the City Council in 1995. Staff.
Thank you. The property at 7301 Penn Avenue, currently home to the Drapery Place business, is designated low-density residential in the comprehensive plan and zoned single-family residential. The property owner is applying to change that designation to neighborhood commercial and rezone the property to C1 neighborhood business. As part of a citywide evaluation prepared for the comprehensive plan update, this property was among several commercial properties identified for reclassification to commercial designations. The draft 2040 comprehensive plan proposes redesignating this property from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial. And following approval of the comprehensive plan update this November, staff would then begin work on a citywide zoning update to bring zoning designations into conformance with the comprehensive plan. This property is currently on the market for sale or lease and has been for a couple months at this time. And the current zoning designation, or the current residential zoning designation, has been a hindrance to attracting a potential buyer or lessee for the property. While the property owner could simply wait for the property to be rezoned as part of the citywide update, that process is not anticipated to be complete for 6 to 12 months. The property owner has submitted applications to redesignate and rezone the property at 7301 Penn Avenue now. Given that the property is already planned to be redesignated and rezoned to neighborhood commercial, staff does recommend approval of changing those designations at this time instead. And then related to that stipulation on the property, when the Drapery Place moved to this location in 1995, the following stipulation was placed on the property. I'm going to quote, that any sublet of the 7301 Penn Avenue building require the approval of the City Council. Similar to the zoning issue, this sublet stipulation could also be a hindrance to finding a new business use or buyer for the property. The property owner has requested that this stipulation be removed at this time. By removing this stipulation, any general retail or services uses similar to the Drapery Place could open without further council approval or without going through a separate process. Any substantial change in use or a conditionally permitted use, such as a restaurant, would still require an additional Planning Commission and Council approval. Staff recommends approval of a resolution removing that stipulation from the property at this time. That concludes the staff report. The property owner was not able to be present, but I know they sent a representative who may be able to answer any additional questions you have about potential future users for the property.
Do we have any questions for staff before we ask the applicant's representative to speak?
I have a question for staff.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, under neighborhood commercial, is that, I understand that, restricts things like restaurants and that'd be coffee houses too, stuff like that, anything that prepares food fresh, is that correct?
That's correct. Full service restaurants are not allowed, permitted or conditional in the C1 district. I believe I don't have the zoning district open in front of me, but
No,
I believe takeout restaurants are a conditionally permitted use. We're going to pull up the zoning code here. If you want a full take
No,
on what is
that's
permitted.
fine. I
Okay.
just, it more leads me to my next question is, in terms of like things like corner stores that sell like grocery items and things like that too. Is that considered a neighborhood?
That would be, yeah,
Okay.
a convenience store or limited neighborhood grocery would be a permitted retail use in that zoning district.
I think that's good. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Yeah, Commissioner Quam?
I was wondering why they put that 95 stipulation on there. Do you know?
You know, I read through the minutes of the council, and it looked there wasn't a whole lot of explanation for why it went on there. It's interesting because the drapery place. At the time, the property was zoned C1 neighborhood commercial before it had been rezoned to residential, and a business such as the drapery place would have been permitted. It's a permitted retail use in that district, so it was rather unusual that was put on there. I think previously, that building was built for a more automotive-related use before the drapery place took it over. I think it was automotive detailing or auto body repair, and you can kind of see that in the building design with the garage bays. So I think it may have been that there were several requests in the file also to allow a different automotive auto body repair after those had kind of been written out of the neighborhood business district. There were several attempts from people to rezone it to a higher zoning district, such as C2, to kind of allow automotive uses. So it could have just been the council putting kind of that extra layer of protection to make sure that it wasn't going to be an automotive or other undesirable use.
Any other questions for staff? Otherwise, would the applicant's representative like to make a statement? If you could do it over at the podium, sir, thank you. And state your name and address.
My business address or my home?
Either one is fine.
Okay, my name is William Boyson. I'm vice president of the Drapery Place at 7301 Penn Avenue South in Richfield. I want to thank Matt. He did a good explanation, and I know that when we were applying for the permit to buy the Drapery Place, I know an automotive was totally turned down because a friend of mine looked at it first, and he was going to put in a John Deere garden dealership in there, and they turned him down because of the automotive. The neighbors didn't want it. And then we came in with a retail of a drapery place where we're going to have a showroom, and we're just going to have deliveries of blinds and drapery fabric, during the 9 to 4:30 hours, and the council decided that they liked that real well. At this time, to answer Brian's question, we have no restaurants or grocery stores or anybody looking at our store. We had a couple pub people from Massachusetts call us, and we told them that there was no sense even flying out here to look because we don't have parking for a pub. We don't have parking for a bar or restaurant. We've only have 10 parking spots. It's beautiful for what we want as a retail business, but not a restaurant. At this time right now, we have two people very, very interested in our building, and one is a painting contractor out of Eden Prairie, and they're going to do the same thing we are. They're going to have a showroom for interior and exterior painting where they can show their product, they can show their pictures, and then have storage in the back just like what we do with the garage doors and the storage. But as far as food, restaurants, bars, no, we have nobody even interested right at this time. The second interested party would just be a retail office doing the same thing similar to what we're doing. And that's the only two right now that are really submitting letters of intent, and we're hoping that we can get this passed because we would like to sell it to the painters, to be honest with you. It'd be perfect for the Richfield area, having a person that can paint houses and interiors. I know we'd sure like to have somebody like that in Newmarket out where I live. Any questions from the board commission?
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank y'all because we've been out there for 23 years and we really love being in Richfield. We've done work here at City Hall. I know Kathy knows me. I think I've worked with her once. Maybe not. You look familiar. Anyway, no. Pardon me? Yeah, and I think Richfield's treated us very good, and we hope we can get this passed without any problems. It's been a great community work in. We were over on 77 and a half renting from Bob Adelman long before we were on 73rd and Penn, so we've really been in the Richfield area the whole time our business has been open since 72. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One quick thing I would just like to
Sure.
say, my grandma worked for you all for a while.
Pardon me?
My grandmother worked for you all for years.
What's her name?
Antoinette or Nettie?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Nettie. Okay.
No, thank you.
All right, so we'll open a public hearing if any other members of the public would like to speak about this matter. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion of closing the public hearing? All in favor of closing?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So do we have a motion on this item or any other discussion or reaction from planning commissioners?
Just curious, Mr. Chair, do we have to motion each of these individually then? Each of these actions? No, just as one.
Including the council stipulation, that can all be in one?
Yes, you can
Okay.
approve them all as
Okay.
one motion. If someone would like to
Yep.
consider them separately, you certainly can, but if you're going to recommend and unanimously approve, you can motion as one.
Commissioner Payne, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the items 1, 2, and 3, recommending approval of amending the comp plan designation of 7301 Penn Avenue South from low-density residential to neighborhood commercial. Number 2, recommend approval of rezoning 7301 Penn Avenue South from single-family residential to neighborhood business. And 3, recommend approval of a resolution removing the 1995 sublet stipulation from the property at 7301 Penn Avenue South.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to say, I think these neighborhood businesses are really a good thing. If there were an active thing like a corner store someday at this location or others, I think that would be great for the neighborhood, but it's also great if it's a service business that the community needs. So I'm really excited to see this one little property change over, so.
I agree, and thank you for being in Richfield for so long.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yep, thank you. So our next item would be a public hearing to consider changes to the city's zoning ordinance to make tattoo businesses permitted rather than conditionally permitted in the C2 General Business District. Staff.
In recent months, representatives from Minnesota Luxury Laser Education contacted city staff about relocating their facilities to the Richfield Shops property located at 6501 Nicollet Avenue. Minnesota Luxury Laser Education, currently based in Bloomington, is a private career school providing instruction in laser hair removal, skin tightening, tattoo removal, and cosmetic tattoo services, also commonly known as microblading or permanent makeup. The definition of tattooing in the city's public health code includes all forms of cosmetic tattooing such as these. In addition to public health code regulations found in City Code Section 630, tattoo businesses are also regulated through the zoning code. Tattoo businesses are currently permitted only in the mixed-use community and mixed-use regional districts, which are generally located along 77th Street, the Cedar Avenue corridor, and the Penn Central District. In the general business, or C2 district, tattoo businesses are conditionally permitted when these five buffer distance conditions are met. And I want to be clear that all the way that conditional use permits work is all of these would have to be met. So that the business would have to be located not less than 100 feet from residential property, not less than 350 feet from any school, church, park, daycare center, or public library, not less than 350 feet from any establishment selling or serving alcohol, not less than 100 feet from the right-of-way of an entry street to the city, which is defined as Penn Avenue, Lyndale Avenue, Nicollet, Portland, Cedar, and 12th Avenue, and finally not less than 1,000 feet from other tattoo establishments. These regulations would prohibit MN Luxury Laser or any other tattooing business from locating in many commercial properties in the C2 zoning district. In the specific case of Richfield Shops at 65th and Nicollet, the space that the applicant intends to lease is adjacent to the El Tejaban restaurant, which holds a full liquor license. Additionally, that entry street provision, 100-foot setback requirement would apply, as the Richfield Shops building is within 100 feet of Nicollet Avenue. In order for Minnesota Luxury Laser to locate within Richfield shops, they would need to apply for a conditional use permit, as well as apply for variance from 4 of those 5 buffer criteria. Rather than directing Minnesota Luxury Laser to request a conditional use permit and several variances, staff recommended that the applicant instead request an ordinance amendment to reevaluate these regulations. Staff is recommending an ordinance amendment that would make tattoo businesses permitted rather than conditional in the C2 zoning district. While the city could take a narrower approach to the matter, such as making adjustments to those buffer conditions or even specifically allowing only cosmetic tattoo businesses, staff's research into Richfield zoning code and the codes of peer cities indicated that a broader change to zoning regulations for tattoo businesses may be more appropriate. Making tattoo businesses permitted would bring the C2 zoning district into conformance with the mixed-use districts where tattoo businesses are permitted without buffer distance requirements. Under the proposed amendment, tattoo businesses would remain prohibited in the C1 neighborhood commercial and mixed-use neighborhood MUN zoning districts. In researching peer cities, staff found that Bloomington, St. Louis Park, and Hopkins all permit tattoo businesses in their commercial districts. St. Louis Park and Hopkins considered them as service and art businesses, respectively. In Bloomington, tattoo businesses formerly required a conditional use permit, but they were made permitted in many of their commercial and industrial districts in recent years. Bloomington staff cited that the city's strict controls on the licensing side of body art establishments had made it onerous to also regulate such businesses through the zoning code. For the past several years, there has been just one tattoo business operating in Richfield, located in the Penn Central District. Based on this recent history and the low number of annual requests that staff receives relating to tattoo businesses, staff finds that the market is capable of determining the appropriate locations and quantity of tattoo-related businesses in the city. The regulation and licensure of tattoo establishments remains tightly regulated by Richfield Public Health Code, Section 630, which was attached to the Planning Commission packet for reference. No changes are proposed to City Code Section 630 at this time. And then lastly, I did want to close on the map that was attached to the report. I'll bring that up on the screen here. If the technician could bring us, there we go. So on the map, you can see in purple are all of the mixed-use community and mixed-use regional zoning districts where a tattoo business could open today as a permitted use. That is, it would be considered no different from a hair salon, nail salon, medical office, or any other type of service or office use. In red, you have the C2 general commercial and PC2 planned general commercial districts where it's currently a conditional use but is proposed to be made into a permitted use. So in addition to everything else I've said, I would just say that this change would also kind of bring some geographic parity to where these businesses are located, in that today it's kind of Penn Avenue and Cedar Avenue and along 494, and these, generally speaking, would allow tattoo businesses in the commercial districts along Nicollet, Lindale, and 66th Street as well. That's all we have for the staff report. I can take any questions related to the ordinance itself, and then we have a representative of the applicant here who probably can't answer your questions about the ordinance, but I'm sure can answer any questions you might have about the Minnesota Luxury Laser School and why they were interested in Richfield and why they're interested in that location in particular. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for staff? Yeah.
Can you tell me what other type of businesses require conditional use permits?
Yes, I can. In the C2 general commercial, the types of businesses that require a conditional use permit are going to be like full-service restaurants that serve alcohol, large retail shopping centers over 100,000 square feet, drive-through restaurants, hotels, hospitals, and then a variety of automotive, auto body, auto mechanical repair type businesses, gas stations, car washes, and then pawn stores and firearms related uses.
So kind of a related question, how do we decide that something goes on that list in a broad sense? Because I would assume like a pawn shop and a tattoo parlor, maybe both have historically suffered from a negative image of, I don't know, being associated with crime or something. Why is pawn shop on? And I guess I'm just wondering what's the basis for how we picked to put something on that list or not?
Your question is what's the basis for why something would be
Conditionally permitted rather than permitted.
Yeah, so I mean some of these if you read through the conditions, there are spacing requirements. So with auto repair, the pawn operation, some of those do require buffer distances from residential. Others do not. I think with the automotive, there's certainly the consideration of noise from the actual work itself. Something like a gas station, the light and pollution.
Mm-hmm.
With a large shopping center, you could sort of see the same. I think high parking demand, traffic generation, a drive-through restaurant, same story. Basically, generally speaking, these are either uses that are sort of larger in nature or uses that have a specific sort of potential for detrimental impact, not being compatible neighbors in like a neighborhood strip mall setting. I think with a tattoo business, generally none of those are really present. There's no particularly high traffic generation. They don't do anything outdoors or make any sort of noise or odor or any any of those kind of nuisance factors that these other types of businesses do.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to make a statement?
I do.
Oh, sorry,
actually.
Mr. Rudolph.
The current tattoo shop in Richfield, what type of conditions did they receive when opening? Do you remember?
So they were on. Well, I'm actually not sure if they're still. We're not sure if they're still open. There was one on Penn, like around 64th and Penn, which changed names, and we're not certain if they're still in business. It's looking pretty quiet over there. But since they were on Penn Avenue, where a tattoo business is just permitted, they actually did not have to meet. They were just able to open as any other retail service office type of business. They didn't have to check with city staff first.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
For staff, one of the setbacks was from schools. I wonder if there's any concern about that nowadays. And we approved that PUD for the K-8 over in the old Bramer Bank building. That would be near, just for example. Wondering if there's any input from schools about the setback from tattoo parlors, because that's one of the designations.
Yeah, we didn't. I guess we didn't hear from schools in particular, but I think that was one of the concerns expressed by at least one member of the commission about kind of allowing a school into a business district, was that there are some stipulations like this that might kind of affect that. And I think as we see that school, I guess it's not even the first to move into the hub area proximate to retail uses. So I guess that. Yeah, we haven't heard any feedback from schools on whether they feel that this would be detrimental to them. I don't believe it would be. But I guess that's allowing schools into commercial settings like that is certainly another factor to consider in how they play with other zoning regulations.
And do you know how Edina or Minneapolis view these sort of tattoo setbacks, tattoo parlor setbacks?
I don't know how Edina regulates them. In Minneapolis, they're permitted in their sort of equivalent neighborhood commercial zoning districts.
Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to make a statement? Nope. Any questions for the applicant that we should call her up? No? Okay. So any discussion about the proposed changes at this point, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I kind of like that, they are conditional use because it does give, if I look at the zoning district, right now, it would, if we change this, it would allow a tattoo parlor across the street in my residential district. And I'm not sure that would be a good fit, by just opening the door. I think they're conditional use for a reason. And I think that, just changing it off, I don't think it feels right changing it, just seeing where the affected areas are.
So you are in favor of changing it or not? I didn't get that last statement.
I'm
Okay.
not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
As far as our discussion,
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, I think I just,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, I had just a general discussion about this. I think, while I definitely somewhat share your sentiment on that, because I'm just looking at the conditional uses that we would have to approve otherwise, rather than changing, the whole, the whole process in general, the whole ordinance. I guess I would have been in favor of approving all those individually, and I don't see why we can't keep doing that, but I also see the other side where it makes sense, where it's, a lot of other cities kind of have the same, the same more open, lenient standards, and I'm looking at the residential, or I'm looking at the commercial uses for the neighborhood on the map, and, it isn't, like you say, it's not going to be open to neighborhood commercial. Is that correct, Matt?
That's correct. It would not be permitted in the C1 neighborhood commercial.
So it's only C2 and mixed use, correct?
That's correct. It's in
Yeah.
the higher mixed-use districts, regional and community. Those were the purple areas on the map where it's permitted currently, and then would be allowed in the C2 and PC2 districts, which are red on the map.
And so, for instance, it couldn't open at the Drapery Place,
Yeah.
And so, and I feel, I personally feel safe in just seeing the locations and what's available for real estate in a lot of these places, and where it could potentially even fit in, and where a tattoo place would actually see a place that would fit them. And I think I feel comfortable with changing the ordinance as a result. So I guess that's kind of my 25 cents worth.
I think, Commissioner Rudolph, I'm kind of looking at the list of conditionally permitted things. I'm almost coming at it from the other angle, where it's a little hard to read some of these things and wonder why those remain conditional. And I particularly am kind of choking on medical marijuana dispensaries is one that we put as a conditional use recently, and it does become a little bit odd to me to say that a cancer patient receiving legal medication, we need to heavily regulate the buffer distance on that, but not this. But I appreciate that we're not here to talk about that issue, and I don't want to hold what may have been a poor decision on that regard against tattoo parlors. So I think staff has made a good case for it, and I'm prepared to support it, but I would like us to maybe look at this list in general, because it does seem like there's some other things that are, the same arguments hold, that there isn't a clear reason to limit this. And I think that the most compelling argument to me is just the fact that it is already allowed in mixed-use districts, and it would kind of artificially concentrate interest into those neighborhoods that just happen to be mixed use, and that they could just as easily be commercial, like the 494 corridor. So I guess I'm in favor of allowing it in a similar district elsewhere in the city. Any other comments from the commission? Okay, and anybody want to make a motion?
I believe the public hearing is still open.
Thank you. I apologize. So,
Public hearing, yeah.
thank you. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? This is your opportunity to do so. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Thank you for the housekeeping reminder, Matt. Do we have a motion on the on the item on the ordinance change?
I would like to motion to approve the attached ordinance amendment making tattoo businesses permitted rather than conditionally permitted in the C2 General Business District.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. And it was just the one item, right? All right. So our next item would be liaison reports. Community Services Commission? City Council?
No report.
HRA?
No report.
School Board?
Yes, I have a short report. The superintendent highlighted some education issues for the 2018 election, which are the basic education formula continues to lag behind inflation, and Minnesota falls far short of paying for its special education mandates, which I know is a concern in Richfield. And then the referendum passed last year, and they will start using that for the capital facility work and to reduce class sizes. My report.
Transportation Commission, the commission received their first draft of the Richfield pedestrian plan, which has some interesting ideas, improving crossings on major streets, and specifically coming up with a land use approach to how you might design neighborhood streets, which I thought was a really interesting concept. So the idea being that like you'd have a major street option for commercial areas and downtown areas, and a minor street have sort of a variety of options rather than just a single standard. So some interesting stuff in there. They also had their joint meeting with Edina last week, but it was in the middle of the thunderstorm, so I have no report from that meeting. In Chamber of Commerce, I don't think we have anyone, do we? Okay. City Planners report?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that there will be a work session with the City Council. It's tentatively scheduled for October 9th, and that's to hear some preliminary development ideas from Lund's on Penn Avenue. You'll recall that they do have a very large lot over there that's fairly underutilized, so they're going to come to us with some ideas, tentatively scheduled for October 9th. Right now, my schedule says 5:30. I'll keep you updated. There's another item on that work session agenda as well. I'm not sure which will come first. And then I also wanted to mention that October is National Community Planning Month. It's a good month to talk to your friends and neighbors about how important the work that you do is and how important the work that the city does in terms of future planning and land use planning and thinking about these things into the future is and why they should get involved. The National APA puts out some information on America's Great Places, and that information is available on their website. It's planning.org, and it talks about great neighborhoods, great streets, great places, and how planning influenced that, how planning helped those things come to be. There are great places in every state, so you would be able to look up examples here in Minnesota. There are examples of great public spaces, Rice Park in St. Paul, Grand Rounds has one in the past in Minneapolis. Some really exciting stuff. Talk to your neighbors. If you're involved in the schools, this is a great time to talk to students about this work and encourage them to get involved as well.
Our next meeting time and location, I guess the work session to be determined on October 9th, but our next regular meeting will be October 22nd. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.